Next, we have Pietro Guardini. Pietro is an independent game user researcher, so he's working, consulting game companies about how to create better gaming experiences, basically. So, welcome on stage, Pietro.
Okay. How bizarre, huh? Let's start. My name is Pietro Guardini. I'm a former academic researcher in human factors. Now working in the game industry as a user researcher. My focus is the study of player psychology and behavior via techniques such as playtesting, analytics, expert analysis, and more. My goal is to help developers deliver players the best gaming experience possible. Okay. So what's psychology? Psychology is the science that studies behavior, mind, and emotion. There are many different branches covering basically every aspect of life. More than 150 years of experimental research provided a massive amount of knowledge in many different areas. Methods have been refined and theories have been discarded throughout the years. But the question for today is why bother with psychology if you are a game developer? So these are the three answers. A designer's job is to predict the future, basically. Their task is to figure out in advance how gamers will understand and interact with the product. They have to be sure that gamers will play their games in the intended manner in order to craft experiences without frustration, doubts, or uncertainty. Forecasting, however, is extremely difficult and our brain isn't very good at it at all. But for scientists, not knowing is actually very exciting. It's an opportunity to discover. Last but not least, platform holders and big publishers have been working with psychologists in the last 20 years. Game user researchers basically started a new branch of psychology. And today, major and middle-sized studios, as well as several indies, are working with games user researcher. So, let's start with something straightforward, something that developers can put to good use immediately. Please welcome cognitive biases. They are basically traps that our brain will fall into when we have to judge something. I'm not talking about subjective tastes or granny's head in the clouds. No. These are systematic deviations. They happen all the time to all of us. I put together a list of these biases from different types, decision-making, belief, behavioral biases, social biases, and memory bias. So here we have the first 51. Now we have 94, 146. Please don't take it too personally. I'm not saying that your mind have a problem or two sometimes, but since I'm just like you, no harm, no foul. Okay, 184. This is the end of the list. So now for the good news, because if we are aware of this kind of biases, we can do something. We can craft a series of heuristics, which are principles or guidelines that can help during practical development, both at the design and at the evaluation stage of the product. Let's pick some of them. Let's say, Okay, number 18, bizarreness effect. Bizarre material is better remembered than common one. So, you got me. Now you understand why I started this talk by brushing my teeth. Because I wanted you to remember me as that crazy guy at the Game Happen conference who talked about cognitive biases and how to take advantage of them. But in games, you may not remember exactly that you picked up an object, a certain object in a certain game. You maybe don't remember exactly the context, but if I say a rubber chicken with a pulley in the middle, how can you get more bizarre than that in a pirate adventure? I just leave the name of the guy for copyright reason. I'm not sure the copyright is his. However, you can buy this nice pillow from his Etsy page, and you can make your living room absolutely unforgettable. So let's go to another and get another bias, Psychia effect, number 66. This bias says that people tend to overvalue objects that they contributed to build, regardless of the quality of the end results. Kind of harsh, huh? A recent event, I think, makes for a perfect example of this bias. Take-Two requested to shut down the development of a mode that allows additional modification to be installed in GTA 5. This mod could, in fact, be exploited by other malicious software and, in the end, interfere with the online experience of everybody. The community took the announcement with the expected goodwill and understanding not. This is the Steam Spy page showing you the number of positive and negative reviews of the game. So currently, recent reviews of GTA 5, I'm talking about the PC version, of course, stands as overwhelmingly negative, and a Change.org petition against the publisher intervention has over 60,000 subscribers. So the entire world actually is creating content, like videos, posts, images, songs, 3D objects for Steam VR Home. It seems that people discovered that participation is better than mere fruition. Developers are taking this into account, of course, and modding is something you should absolutely be thinking of in your games, but be careful of this kind of reactions. Third bias, number 182, Zeigarnik effect. Uncompleted or interrupted tasks are remembered better than completed ones. The name belongs to the Russian researcher Bluma Zeigarnik, who studied this effect during the 20s, so a lot of time ago. Bear in mind that remember here stands for floating in your mind. No, it has a sense of stickiness. And probably you felt the effect of this bias if you are into Netflix. Because thanks to the narrative trick called cliffhanger. So this happened now when a main character is faced with a difficult situation just moment before the end of an episode of a serialized fiction. The producer of the series hoped, but Bluma predicted this 100 years ago, that a cliffhanger will ensure the audience will return to see how the character resolves the dilemma. But in games, well, it has been, if you think about in Tetris, which is one of the most successful game of all times, you are given uncompleted row that you have to complete, okay? So your task is, of course, to fix them. So we just saw three cognitive bias and how developers can and had taken advantage from being familiar with them. Possibly you already heard about some of them under the name of design guidelines. So you are not particularly impressed so far, huh? Is there something more useful? Okay, I've got something from the branch of psychology called behaviorism. According to behavioral theories, human action has been considered as heavily dependent on consequences of previous action. If the consequences are bad, there is a high chance the action will not be repeated. If the consequences are good, the action that led to it being repeated become more profitable, more probable. If you look at one, if I look at one of you, and that person is nodding at me, I perceive this nod as a sign of approval. Okay, so I am inclined, forced to look at that person again throughout the talk. Okay? Does this work in video games? Sure. How rewards are given out actually affect how the player subsequently interacts with the game. I believe much of the work of a game designer is just this, is to provide players with rewards as a consequences of their actions. For instance, they have to place a nice new exotic weapon right up after a boss fight to encourage players to keep fighting bosses, and so on. There are several patterns that can predict. Those patterns are these reinforcement schedules. And we can have a look at a couple of them. This is the fixed ratio, again studied by behaviorist researcher 100 years ago, more or less. So what is the fixed ratio reinforcement program? Is when the reward is given after a fixed number of responses. For example, after killing 10 monsters, the players level up. You see the oblique line means that the player is giving, is acting, is doing what I want him to do. So like kill monsters. 1, 2, 3. At the 10th monster, cling, the arrow is the reward that is given to the player. In this example, the leveling up. When the player understands these mechanics, her activity will rise in speed. She will kill more monsters faster. However, as you can see by the flat lines, when the player receives her rewards, there is a pause in that activity. The player does something else. Maybe she explores or crafts an object. She is satisfied and doesn't feel the need to perform the same activity again soon. That is, kill again another monster. This is a dangerous moment. The flat line is a dangerous moment because players are more likely to put down the controller and stop playing. If they are not allowed to play differently, maybe by completing a side quest. Consider how many times have you stopped playing after finally reaching level 40 or after just beating the big boss, in comparison to when you are just about to reach level 40. Now, of course, now you know why your quest page, your quests page in Destiny is so crowded with different missions, and why there is always a save point after a boss fight. You will agree, however, that again, a game designed in such a way can become very predictable. because I know that every 10 monsters I will get a level up. If in a mechanic like one shot, one kill, I know that I just have to aim and shoot once to kill the monster. So let's put inside some variability. For example, let's say that the amount of damage relative to your shots are not fixed. This should remind you about RPGs and dice throwing. So, the consequence of this injection of variability is the variable ratio reinforcement program. In this case, the player doesn't know when exactly he will receive the reward. So he knows it will in the end, but it's not certain. The result is an incredibly high activity because just one more action, just one more killed monster can guarantee players with the reward. This is, of course, very motivating and very addictive. However, there is a downside. This strategy can also bring to burnout. It means that the player basically gets sick and tired of your game and never ever play it again. Think about, again, Destiny. The Destiny loot system is based on a variable ratio reinforcement program schedule. You don't know when your enemies will drop the legendary items you are looking for. Sooner or later, it's going to happen. So the player will go on shooting enemies during patrols. However, you can't go on forever. Because, don't nod, otherwise I look at you. No, okay, just joking. It doesn't go on forever because Bungie knows psychology, and Bungie doesn't want its players to going into burnout. In fact, in order to claim your reward, you have to exit the battleground, go to the tower, talk to the cryptarch, who will decipher the engrams, and thus unlock the rewards which can finally be used. So now you know why you don't just get the reward from the ground during battle, but you have this little. Now let's compare these the two graphs together. As developers, let's assume we have to decide how to distribute rewards for a certain game mechanic. Here, please note that we have the same amount of rewards. We have 6 rewards on the variable ratio on the left, and 6 rewards on the fixed on the right. So the amount of assets I had to build as a developer, I don't know, new cars. Oh, you won a race, you unlock a new car, a new weapon, a new game mechanic, okay, is just the same. But look at the time. Look at how much time does the players play in one case and in the other. If I decide to go by with a variable ratio, I know that I will get a huge amount of activity. People go crazy and play like hell. However, I should have to, for keeping them playing for the same amount of time of the other program, I had to produce 4 times the rewards, the assets. Okay, so by choosing a certain reinforcement schedule, not only we can decide what kind of experience the player will have, but we can also keep our budget under control, which is not bad, actually. To summarize, schedules of reinforcement are helpful for devs because they can expect and thus control different patterns of responses by gamers. We just saw 2, but there are several more. Now, as we can, let's now do another step forward. No, we saw that behavioral theories are based on external factors. No, the reward, the reward that the player receives after he did something, okay, goes and modifies the frequency of appearance of his action. However, it's been found that this type of rewards, you do this, you get that, do not always work. And absolutely, a bigger reward doesn't always guarantee a better performance. Findings from behavioral economics research showed that rewards work very well when the task to complete is easy. A simple task, a simple set of rules, the procedure is known, the goal is clear, and there is a simple solution. So, sort of simple tasks. On the other hand, if the completion of the task requires creativity, open-mindedness, experimentation, because the rules are unknown, the procedure is uncertain and the solution is non-obvious. In this case, if there are rewards, they don't work. Actually, they can make people's performance worse, because in short, they will narrow the focus of the people involved into the task. When the task is tough, we can say rewards make us dumber. So, if I want to explain why Minecraft is the most played video game in the world with more than 120 million copies sold, I need to go a little bit beyond external motivation and reinforcement schedules, because I simply can't explain such sustained engagement with sweet carrots and sharp sticks. So, if I want to explain this kind of behavior, we'll see later. We have to look at new theories. We have to look at intrinsic motivation. So not extrinsic rewards, extrinsic motivation, but intrinsic rewards. So we have to reply questions like why people are engaged in doing things that they like, things that matter to them, and they make feel part of something important. We listened a couple of talks ago now about the importance of giving answers to the why I'm doing this, why I'm playing. So if I had only one takeaway from this talk for you is, I would pick this one. I would pick this new theory called self-determination theory that has been specifically applied to video games by 2 guys, Scott Rigby and Richard Ryan, 2 former academic researcher, turned consultants, and founder of a company called Immersive. If you are interested, I suggest to have a look at their talks in the GDC Vault, because they are really, really helpful. So, in short, according to STD theory, humans have 3 basic intrinsic needs. Intrinsic, they already have these needs. I don't have to create an asset and pay for the asset. Need for competence. Humans naturally seek to gain mastery by learning how things work. Need for autonomy. Humans are not happy when they are controlled. They want to act in ways that reflect their wishes. And last but not least, need for relatedness. Humans need meaningful connection to others. So if you can satisfy all these 3 needs in your real life, you're living a wonderful life. If your game scores big points in satisfying those three needs, you will have tons of engaged players having a great time and wanting a sequel. And you'll also have a very happy publisher. And if you don't have a publisher, you will have one soon. Of course, you can't get an A every time for every project in competence, autonomy, and relatedness. But then again, it isn't required, because being strong in just one of those has been proven to be more than enough to reach huge success. So let's have a look at each of them. Competence. Competence is the core experience of overcoming a challenge, and video games are, of course, the perfect medium to satisfy this need. You can try and you can fail, and if you fail, you can easily try again and put new strategies to the test. Learning is actually made easier with video games. And once you overcome challenge number 1, you are faced with challenge number 2, which is usually more difficult, no? Because while dealing with challenge number 1, you have learned something you can apply on the field while dealing with challenge number 2. So this is called progression. So I think coin-ops are a great example from the arcades of the 70s and 80s, are a perfect example. No clear goal, clear challenge. The difficulty is perceived just right, because it starts very low and then goes up, ramp up accordingly to the expertise of the player, to the rising expertise of the player. And you have feedback with lights, sounds, animations, and so on. So the key is for satisfying this need for competence is be very good at giving the players a clear goal, an adequate challenge, and feedback. And if I had to, I would bet on feedback. Why I think feedback plays the most important role here? Because competence feedback is needed to inform the player, of course, on how he's performing, so that he can adjust, verify, and learn in the end. For example, in a racing game, you can tell the player his final position, okay? Inform him about each lap time he sets, but the player will find it much more useful to know about braking points. When I have to brake, I'm braking too early, too late, too much, too little, and trajectory. I'm traveling through this turn too wide. I don't know. Reducing or removing this type of feedback equals to missing a huge opportunity for sustained engagement. Autonomy. Autonomy is pursuing things that interest us and that we want to pursue. When activities are done for self-interest and personal value, we perceive a high sense of autonomy. If, on the contrary, we are forced to do things we find uninteresting, we feel a diminished sense of control over our life. Again, video games are perfect, number 2. Video games are perfect for satisfying this need too. They excel at providing the player with interesting choices and then presenting meaningful consequences. A great example for satisfying autonomy are, of course, RPGs. You can choose which path to follow. You can join your party of adventurers. You can decide where to assign your experience point, but please let's forget the ending of Mass Effect 3. This is the consequence of taking away the autonomy from players. So I made you play through all the campaign, giving you autonomy, and then at the end. So just as little note, autonomy is not freedom. Developers can spare tons of options, still scoring high in autonomy, if they align their design intention with the player's will. No? So if I'm using well-crafted stories and good characterization, I can make the player desire to walk on the only path that my budget allows me to build. Okay? It's the right thing to do, but you have to communicate to the player this. Relatedness is the experience of being connected with others and feeling they are interacting in a meaningful way. What I do matters to others, and I care about them. And together, we are part of something important. For a third time, video games, again, are perfect for satisfying this need. They excel, in fact, at offering shared experiences, not only during gameplay, but also outside it, if you think. Game communities, user-generated content, YouTubers, fanfic, and so on. MMOs maybe are the best of example of this need. But if you think about online action game like Overwatch, when you have been healed just in time with the help of a friend, or you decide to be sacrificed for a team win. Journey is another great example of shared experiences that ticks all the right boxes even without words between players. Okay, just a small note here. The relatedness, it's not something that I need to have just with doesn't work just with other human players. It works also with virtual character, no? If the virtual character can make the player feel that he's important for them, we are okay with relatedness. Okay, so just to close, I would like to explain why I put the 2017 in the title of the talk. And I think it is important because today, with the growth in depth of games, developers have been able to tick all those three needs, and there are no needs left to work on. Okay, so developers have to work with this. The other side is where the news will come. So the challenge for the future is actually understanding how developers can put new technology like VR and AR to good use in novel ways to satisfy these needs. Okay, thank you.